Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? Fantastic. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a Sunday afternoon. Thanks for joining me. So, I'll be kind of shifting and fixing the technicalities of this. This is my first YouTube live. So, please bear with me and make sure you let me know in the chat if there are any technical difficulties with sound or video. Welcome everyone. So as we go along, if you want to add any questions, please just do so in the chat. That's what the chat is for. And I'll do my best to keep looking at the chat, answering as many questions as I can as we go along. My name is Dr. Suman Chaudhary. For those of you who don't know me, I am the founder and the owner of a wellness center, Karuna Center. And this YouTube live is my first foray into really opening up what I have to offer and share with the rest of the world. So, this is part of my nonprofit Enlightened Living Center, and this helps me kind of spread my view of how things um, how the world, how healing, how spirituality is to me, and based on my own years of experience and research and understanding and intuition. So today will be a fun, informal chat, if you will. I have about 30 years of experience with healing, with spirituality, with wellness in general. I started in the 90s, in the mid 90s. I became a Reiki master in the mid 90s. And soon after that, I went to chiropractic school to really dive into the world of natural health care. And so in the 90s, as you know, was kind of the massive burst of the new age into America, if you will. And people were writing books, people were channeling, people were um, all over the place with it. The metaphysical bookstores were opening up in the cities, so I would spend and frequent those bookstores. Um, and it was an education for me. And me coming from, for those of you who know, my own background, which is a Hindu background. So I was steeped in Hinduism growing up, which we may get into today, but just a very broad combination of religion and philosophy and practice and culture. So I spent a lot of time trying to put all the pieces together with my own religion, Hinduism, and then I learned about Buddhism, Taoism, the mystical religions of the world, um, the mystical side of Christianity, Sufism, getting into the native shamanic traditions, and then just putting together the whole new age phenomenon and its connection to spirituality in general and what people are trying to express with all of that. Most of it, for those of you who know, is based on a lot of theosophy and some of the Western based mystery schools that we've had around for a while: the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, the Theosophists, the Anthroposophists. These are all some are older, but more modern day versions of people trying to put together a spiritual system for everyone to access and understand, because so much has been lost in the West. So much has been lost due to religious influence over the last 2,000 years, really. So, with all that being said, let's entertain some questions. And one question that was brought to me recently that I'll start with until things start flowing with some other questions is a very practical one, and that's how do you integrate spirituality with just normal living, just being here in America right now in 2026 with paying bills, maybe having a family, or obviously just going to work and dealing with the present day stress, right? All around us. Things are happening, crazy things are happening, every week, every day. We're at war right now in a big way. So how do you balance that with a spiritual mindset? If you want to be spiritual, you're trying to be spiritual, have a spiritual mindset, and you're trying to practice and trying to meditate. How do you balance that with having to make money, having to just live as a normal person? So I think that's a very relevant question. And oftentimes we'll tend to veer towards one or the other side. I am all spiritual, so I don't have to worry about money. I'll let the universe provide, and um, God, spirit will take care of me if I just stay on track with my own intuition and what I feel is right for me. Um, and I just keep diving into things I'm led into. Um, Everything will be taken care of. And I can kind of ignore the rest of the world. I can maybe put a back burner on just having to do chores or duties or responsibilities, right? We have that tendency where we want to go, depending on how long you've been on the spiritual track. So then there's the other side. You've got a spiritual side, but yet you feel burdened, you feel overwhelmed with everything you have to do, right? With paying the bills, with the responsibilities, with the duties, taking care of the kids, the pets, loved ones, social responsibilities, obligations. And so those take up time. Those are, they consume our energy. It, before you know it, you come home at the end of the day and you're tired. And instead of meditating, you just want to put on Netflix, just chill, and go to sleep. Maybe have a snack, talk a little bit with your loved one or friend, or not, or that's it. Start up again the next day. And so, you know, we're torn inside where, wait a minute, there's this part of you that I should be meditating. I should be practicing something. I should be reading that spiritual book. I should be doing some personal work or wellness therapy, but I'm tired and I don't have the energy, or I can't focus. I'm too overwhelmed with stress, whatever the stress is for the day. So we go to bed with that unfulfilled longing and that, am I falling behind on spirituality? Will I ever get to where I imagine I need to go based on, what you think, wherever you think you need to go in terms of spirituality based on what you read or know or have been told. And so we waffle back and forth often. And I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about. You waffle back and forth. Um, and usually we end up, for many of us, staying in this limbo place where we know we're not doing the best we can in terms of cultivating spirituality, whatever that means to you. And we know that our heart and our passion really isn't into just making money or just fulfilling duties or just being a mother or being a father or being a sibling or a parent. And, these things we know that are important as far as our life, but we feel torn inside all the time. And especially connected to present day stress and how we're managing stress. And we look at all of the disorder and chaos happening in the world right now. And we wonder, where does spirituality fit in? What's happening here? And that obviously leads to other questions and, bigger issues. But so let me just talk about how to, some personal tips and mindset shifts that will help with this process, because it's a process. There is no answer for anyone. And the thing to keep in mind is, in the old days, in the older cultures of the world, spirituality was very separate from living a normal life. That's something to keep in mind. And for example, in many parts of the world and the tradition I'm from, in the Vedic Hindu viewpoint, the householder is what we call everyone working, living, having a family. They're a householder. They have a house, a home, and they're keeping it together. So they are termed householders. And the householder's primary duty has always been to focus on keeping the house together, keep focusing on the family, and taking care of yourself, staying healthy, making enough money for your standard of living. So spirituality was not part of the equation traditionally in most of the world for a long time up until recently. And so there was a big divide. Once you retired, then it's almost you were socially sanctioned and allowed to go into spirituality. And in the Vedic world, there's a term for that. The one who retires, the sannyasin, the one who renounces the world, and that's usually done in the retirement phase of life after your kids are gone. If you had kids, you retired from work, you fulfilled your desires, your major desires of the world, and it's like, okay, what do I do now? And so then the next step would be, how then do I enter the next phase of my life, which is spirituality? But now that's different. That's completely off the table because right now we're living in a time when we have access to all of spirituality from ancient times. Yet we're trying to integrate it now in normal living. See, and so what we're doing now is, in a sense, unprecedented. Um, we read books. We read these fantastic books about these swamis, these yogis, these shamans, these, you know, um, spiritual beings who have these great teachings and practices, but very rarely are they householders. Are they having a family, right? And so there, we don't know how to always integrate that. And if they did have a family, their karma was so extreme and special where it didn't matter. And they were able to achieve a level of enlightenment which was extraordinary. But yet we still can't relate because we're not there yet. Okay. So, um, so now we're left with having to pay the bills, but yet finding time to meditate, for example, right? Or finding time to go to the classes or the workshops and to do the reading and to stay in that mindset, not let the stress get to you. So, how do we balance that? And what I would say, the most important thing to remember is you can't neglect either one. So the key is to find a balance for both sides. That part of you that is trying to be as spiritual as you can, that's trying to awaken intuition, that's trying to reconnect to something deeper, greater than the self, general definitions of spirituality, and yet balancing with the part that has to pay the bills, that has to eat, that has to make the meals, deal with the kids and the stresses of living, along with dealing with what's happening in the world right now. So finding a balance with that is the key. And remembering you have to honor both and finding ways to honor both. And honoring both is really understanding we have these parts inside of us. These are distinct parts inside of us that are pulling and pushing us in certain ways. And so a key to the journey is learning how to identify them and nourish them appropriately when you can. It's not either or, and sometimes you may fall into nourishing one for some time. You may need to take a retreat. You may need to unplug, or you may need to fully devote to a certain house project or family situation, and know that you will be coming back and balancing. But with all that being said, the key is to remember that there's a part of you that is always there, that is independent of actually both sides. The one who's pursuing the seeker and the one who's working on healing, cultivating spirituality, and the one who's living in the world trying to navigate manage stress. You have these two, but there is a distinct third, if you will. There's more, but there's a third foundational part to all of us in the background that is always there. That part is the key that needs to be connected to, realized, and nourished, and cultivated to allow yourself enough peace of mind to be able to manage what you need to, if that makes sense. So stress is going to come. We can't avoid stress. And even if we think we're avoiding stress, stress will appear again. Stress is another way of looking how how our karma is playing out constantly in our lives and within us. Karma and stress are really the same thing. Okay, so we can't avoid karma. We can't avoid stress. It's how do we manage the karma and the stress in every moment, in every day, throughout the week, in our lifetimes, in our segment of lifetimes. How are we managing that karma and stress? And so, yes, we need a spiritual side that is helping us move, lead us forward and cultivate the important parts of our journey. And yet, we also need to manage being here and now in this body, with this mind, with this life, and with this situation that we're working with on planet Earth. So, we need to remember how to connect to that foundational, unifying witness, observer presence. That is the biggest key. That is where meditation comes in. That's where mindfulness comes in. So, a question just asked is, why is meditation so important to spiritual growth? And this ties in directly to that. Meditation is a foundational, established, ancient method to literally actualize what I'm talking about as a foundation. It allows us to create and be and stay connected to that part of our being that is absolutely necessary to balance these sides of us, the spiritual side and the normal householder side, if you will. Because otherwise, you will be pulled. You will be constantly pulled one side to the other, one side to the other, and you will be locked in this duality, if you will. And remember, the ultimate goal of any spirituality, whether it's expressed or not, is to go from duality to non-duality. You want to go from separation to unity. Being separate to being at one. That's the ultimate journey in a sense. So you have to go, that's why I say from duality to non-duality is the overall journey. Whatever your path is and outlook is. So if we're locked in this duality of here and constantly juggling, it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting, and you will run out of energy ultimately. And you may not fully be able to honor either side, is the thing. So the other way is you have to find a middle ground to fall back on while you are juggling both. And falling back on that is something you have to practice, literally. And meditation is a method to directly practice that, to cultivate that state of mind. And then when you incorporate elements of mindfulness, they go hand in hand with meditation, that allows you to apply and stay established in that meditative state while you are being in the moment, being present, dealing with what you need to. All that's based on mindfulness. How you apply the principles that you're learning in meditation to the moment. Essentially, another way of saying mindfulness. That is the essence of mindfulness and being present, is how are we responding and being with ourselves, our thoughts, our sensations, our feelings, our senses, whatever's happening, our stresses. This is our internal environment, right? And this is what we're trying to juggle and deal with in terms of spirituality and leading a normal life. So, finding some way to unplug. So, for most people, this looks like unplugging, finding ways to unplug from the chaos of the world, or um, even the pursuit of spirituality, which itself can be exhausting. And so when we think of unplugging, what we're really wanting is a break. We're wanting a reprieve. We're wanting to step back and not have to do anything, because we get caught up in the doing of things, right? Doing spiritual things, or doing things, responsibilities, duties, work that we have to, washing the dishes, tending to the kids, eating, doing duties as a householder is that big category. So we're always seeking this break because it's tiring to do all that. We need a break because we have limited energy. And of course, a side note, as we cultivate properly, our energy does increase so that we can do more, is what ends up happening. But until that process really blossoms, though, we have limitations of energy. So that means we're always seeking a reprieve, a break from things. And really, what that means is we're trying to reconnect to that sense of presence and awareness in the background that it doesn't have to do. That's the thing. Whether that's getting into nature for a lot of people, taking time in silence, taking a break from everything, taking a break from the news, especially right now, taking a break from work, vacations. Of course, many of us want to take a break from our families, and sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, depending if you have kids. And so that break is really that attempt for ourselves, our body and mind, to fall back into the greater ocean, if you will, of our background level awareness, neutral, pure awareness. So you need a means or methods to get there, and you need to continuously find time to get as close to that as you can, whatever that is for you. That's the key. And then remembering, as you cultivate that connection to that inner stillness, and if you don't have any connection to that inner stillness, well, that's your main job. You've got to realize that is part of what needs to be done. How can you find that inner connection, right? And then, of course, meditation is a means to that. It's an established, ancient, in my opinion, the most universal methodology to this process. Meditation is the key. It's always there in every mystical, metaphysical tradition of going inward. If you're going to go inward, you have to learn how to meditate properly. That's what it comes down to. And you can start with guided meditation, but you can't stop there. You have to go to where you learn how to meditate without guidance, and then moving further deeper along the journey and the path of meditation, which itself is a whole it's a whole path onto itself. But stepping into that is the key. So please, if there are further questions, come on board. Um, and so I hope this is kind of a good reminder on how to really navigate what's happening now, and these parts of ourselves that we're always trying to seek to balance. How do I be normal for a lot of us, and how do I be spiritual? And it is possible to integrate both. That's the challenge we're all faced with right now, and that's the unique challenge of our modern times, which the byproduct, the positive point of all of this is, because we are the ones of us that have this spiritual fire, that wants to know, that wants to seek, that wants to awaken, that wants to change and transform into something greater. When it's there, it's there. It's burning. And then you have to directly address it. Karma will play out no matter what. And living is literally a journey of burning karma, allowing it to come forth, expressing, dissolving. In other words, burning. So if you see it that way, you can really make sense of what's happening in your life and why we all suffer, we go through things, and most of it's out of our control. So one has to learn how to let the fire burn. You have to learn how to let the karma oftentimes work through and, as I say, burn, and eventually it will dissolve. So that's where learning how to um, allow that process to happen becomes the key. Learning how to not resist. And so, what we're faced with, we are in trials every day, most of us living now, because we're trying to live a life as a normal person with our duties and responsibilities as a householder, but yet be spiritual. So, our karma is burning like crazy. That's the thing. Traditionally, to be spiritual, you would go off, you would go away in seclusion to a monastery, to a nunnery, to an ashram, to the mountains, to the forests, as a hermit. That's how it's always been done. And so that's easy to do in terms of it allows you to work on your stuff, and it allows you to really dive into this journey of inner cultivation spirituality. But it kind of closes the door on the burning of karma. And you see, and so as in traditionally in those settings, as one cultivates spiritually, they will get to states where they can then allow their karma to burn, with their methods they're using it. That's kind of how it works with the ones who go off and renounce the world and, do their thing. So, but there's a long lag in terms of being able to get to that place where you can then burn your karma in that sense. So, but we here are being forced to burn. That's the thing. With every stress, every time you're triggered in the family with news, outside, someone cutting you off, every time you're triggered, that is literally karma shooting up, parts of you shooting up, coming up for you to then handle in a way to let it burn and let it go. You see? It's an extraordinary path that we find ourselves in if you're spiritual and living a normal life, where your potential to awaken is so accelerated potentially. If you can handle it, it's mind blowing. It hasn't been like this traditionally for a long, long time on the planet, is the thing, is something to keep in mind to help you understand, okay, it's hard, and I'm doing something that maybe my friends don't understand, my family doesn't understand, you're a black sheep. Why do you do the things you do? Why are you not going to church? All these things. And this is why. You are given an opportunity to dramatically transform and accelerate your karma beyond what has traditionally been the case. Let's read the comments here. So, in terms of meditation, I love them getting more meditation questions because it's really about that. It's really eh, you've got to improve how you meditate, and which means you have to understand why you're meditating and what is supposed to happen, right? And so most people get derailed by not knowing what's supposed to happen or what to do if something happens or what to expect next. So, and that's one of my big things to really help people understand that process. So, so yeah, when you're meditating, your karma is burning. Obviously, that's the whole point. When you relax, when you let go, when you get still, your stuff comes up. Is the thing. Especially when you're meditating, you're literally allowing that process to happen. So stuff will come up as more thoughts, more sensations, more feelings, and so yeah, you will feel there are all kinds of classes of sensations that will happen in the body if you just focus on that: hot, cold, itching, burning, movement, subtle sensations, pain, pleasurable sensations, things crawling on you. These are all cataloged traditional sensations that can happen. And that is what your energy is moving, your karma energy is moving and coming up as, is what will happen. And so the key thing to keep in mind is when it does happen, yeah, your karma's burning. Literally. And if you can keep that in mind, that will help you let it happen. And that's the key of meditation, right? Letting it happen. Mindfulness meditation is letting whatever is happening, let it happen. Whether it's a thought, a feeling, a sensation, no matter how crazy, extreme, or cool, or powerful it is, you let it happen by staying anchored to something you can, like your breath, or a visualization, or a mantra, or something like that. So, when you're meditating and you notice your thoughts to then release and return to your breath, what does that look like? Like, are you there? Like, are there words in your head that say, okay, go back to the breath? And yeah, in the beginning, whatever you need to do. The breath based meditations, and that's what I have been trained to do and what I focus on. That's where I tend to gravitate towards, and there were reasons for that. The For those of you who are into the yogic world, if you most of all of yoga as we have in the world, in essence, once you trace it back to the origins of yoga in ancient India, whatever forms of yoga, it goes back to one specific person, one specific character, being, by the name of Shiva. Many of you may be, familiar with this, but he is termed the Adi Yogi, the Adi Yoga, the first yogi, the first one to practice yoga. And yoga in the sense that beyond the hatha yoga, beyond just the postures, yoga in terms of a path to returning to the source. That's the true meaning of yoga, just to keep that in mind. Yoga means path, a path that returns you up the mountain to the source, to the divine. Um, and so Shiva slash Adi Yoga is considered the originator, the source of all of yoga in ancient India. And so, in one of his teachings, in um, one of the scriptures attributed to him, where they describe some of his original teachings, where he is teaching, the whole idea is that he taught these things to humanity. And in the mythology of it, one of his first students was Parvati, his wife, in the mythology of it. And so he is teaching to her the over 100 plus methods of meditating. She's asking, so how can I meditate? Literally, the first original question. So he literally outlines 100 plus methods of meditating. And when you look at that, what's interesting is number one, he starts with the breath. Tune in and be aware of the breath. And then what's interesting, the subsequent other meditations that he gets into are then stages and characteristics of what happen as you meditate on the breath. So they're not really different meditations, but they're additions or slight deviations from the original starting point of focusing on the breath. So there's one example of the importance of the breath coming from the source of yoga itself. Okay, one of the original teachings of Shiva in terms of focusing on the breath. And then you have, of course, the primary meditation taught by the Buddha himself, which is on the breath. So you have these two premier teachers of meditation. And so the way to think about it, look, as of we have now, primary all of modern day meditation comes from Shiva or the Buddha. That's it. That's it. And even if there are, Western based or non Hindu Buddhist based methods of meditating, the philosophy and the methodology of the meditation can literally falls under the outline and methodology of either Shiva or the Buddha and how they outlined it. So the thing is, they don't own it, but meditation is a universal ability of humanity. And so the thing is, people will learn how to meditate. Am I unfrozen again? Am I clear? Can you guys hear me again? Just let me know when I'm unfrozen. I just got a notification that I am frozen. Am I good? Okay, great. So what I was saying is, so the teachings of Shiva in terms of, starting with the breath, and the teachings of the Buddha starting at the breath, that's why the breath is so important. And so, yes, you start with the breath, and no matter what you do, the idea is you have to at first return to the breath. Anyone who starts to meditate, their mind is going to wander off the breath, off whatever you're meditating on. So the first level of training is you got to learn how to bring your mind back to whatever you're focused on, the breath, for example. And that is what cultivates the first foundation of meditation, which is concentration, which is focus. So that will start to do that, and you will have to direct that. You will have to use willpower and go, yes, okay, I have to be back on the breath. So literally, if that means go back to the breath, go back to the breath. You have to tell yourself, yes, you have to do that. And so you have to do that until you don't have to do that. This is the basic gist of most things in spirituality. You have to do things until you don't have to do things. Okay. So in the beginning, you have to do some things to lay the foundation to make them natural and easy. So counting can be helpful for beginners. Counting the breath, which gives them a task to do, gives their mind a task. The mind doesn't want to sit still, right? So if you give it a task in the beginning, it's a very easy, effective way to bring it back on track and keep it connected. So counting the breath, counting to 10, counting to 100, counting in reverse, all these are techniques. Connecting a number or a sound to the breath as you breathe in. Breathe in so, breathe out hum. That's a very popular meditation that Yogananda made popular in Autobiography of a Yogi. The other, it doesn't matter. You can om, you breathe in, you breathe out om. Breathe in 1, you breathe out 2. So it doesn't matter. I am happy. So you can connect it to anything. The point is to give your mind something to do so it gets less easily distracted. That's the goal. Until you don't have to do that. And you can just kind of sit back, keep your attention locked in on the breath, however you're locking in on the breath, and then you will proceed in the process of meditation. So I don't want to get too much into the how-to right now, because that could take up the whole day. But getting back to the original question, and the original topic that it started with in terms of how to balance being a householder and being spiritual. And one thing that I want to touch upon, which was also asked upon earlier in terms of question, is the general idea of detoxing is really important. Okay. And so when we say detox, we usually think of physical detox, right? Detoxing the liver, the kidneys, the colon. And then some of us will go into then maybe other non-physical forms of detox, maybe detoxing from social media, detoxing from the news, detoxing from a person, okay? And the idea is, in terms of um, keeping yourself centered and letting, of course, this whole process of, like I said, karma burning, letting yourself move through your stress and letting the tension unwind, detox becomes a key word to all of this: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual detox. Doing things consciously, intently, with intention to pull back and let go of things you may have been caught up with that were not helping or limiting you, and or assisting your own natural process of letting go of toxins is the point. So physical toxins, emotional toxins, spiritual toxins, whatever. Toxins being something, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, something that is affecting you, that in some way either is harming you, limiting you, stifling you, interfering with you expressing or being a better version of yourself in terms of a general broad definition. So detoxing becomes key. We have to detox. We have to find time to whatever that detox area is for you right now. And we all know the areas that we know we're caught up in, or that our body is saying, physical detox is always a thing. We all need to physically detox throughout the year. And, the ones who do, they're much healthier. Whether it's simple fasting from food, certain foods, certain foods you're caught up with, and learning how to just kind of, okay, I need to take a break. Certain substances, that's kind of obvious for most of us, whether it's nicotine or alcohol or other drugs or other things that we get caught up with that we are using to change ourselves in a temporary way that ultimately we're doing, and we may not realize it, so that we don't have to feel something else, usually uncomfortable, right? And that's why we kind of engage in some of these activities that we know are not good for us, but yet we still do them. We can't help it sometimes, right? That's part of us can't help it. We find ourselves doing afterwards, we're like, oh, man, why did I? Okay, let me try harder. So that's the whole process. That's what's coming up. So detoxing helps you not get so caught up in this cyclical process of getting pulled to a place that you shouldn't go and having to pull yourself back, because the process of detoxing takes the pressure off, right? Meditation is a detox, if you will. When you're meditating, that is the ultimate form of detox, right? Of course, you have physical forms of detox, avoiding, abstaining from certain things, that we know. Right now, social media may be a great thing for most of us to abstain from. The phone, right? The number one area that's catching most of our attentions all day long. Scrolling, social media, news, what's happening now, checking our email, right? This constant need to, the phone pulling us back. And it's not so much about the phone, it's not so much about what it is that is pulling us, but it's about our relationship to it. And that's the key to understand. Just like with meditation and mindfulness, it's our relationship to our thoughts and sensations. Our thoughts aren't a problem and our sensations aren't a problem. That's natural phenomenon happening. That's life. That's how our nervous system processes. That's how our mind works. So it's our relationship to our experiences is the problem. How reactive are we being? How much craving are we locked into? How much aversion are we trying to muster up to not feel something? That's the whole problem. So detox is a mindset, and that's the key, getting into that mindset of detox. Okay, what do I need to clear out of me, or what have I been caught up with that's going to be helpful for me now? And so staying in that mindset really helps you with all of this. And the problem is, if you're not conscious of it, even with consciousness, we're loaded with toxins all around us continuously. Physical toxins, one cannot avoid physical toxins right now, no matter where you go on the planet. Air pollution, water pollution, food pollution. You may be eating perfectly in your mind, all organic, taking tons of great supplements, and doing clean, healthy living as much as possible. You've got air filters. You go outside. The products are clean. You do as much as you can, and that's huge. That should be foundational, in my opinion. In terms of living right now as healthy as possible. You're still getting exposed to toxins. You can't help it. You go outside, there's toxins in the air. You go to the store, unless your karma is allowing you to be a hermit right now and not be around any people. Anytime you're around a person, you are exposed to literally what that person is not only exuding, but embodying in their energy field, in the breath they're breathing out. Okay? So, and it's not a point of being scared of that, but it's a point of understanding we are all so interconnected. The illusion of trying to be separate and be clean is very helpful and important, but ultimately there is no separation. You cannot separate because we are literally in an ocean of connection with everything around us. And just the example of a person coming around you, their feelings, what their immune system is processing, the state of their mind, their thoughts, it's all being broadcast for all of us. The thing is, what's funny is we think we can hide. We think we can hold things in and keep things locked away, or not have people know. We put on masks and personas so that we can present ourselves to other people, and functionally that is a thing and it's important. But the reality is, nobody is hiding anything. It doesn't mean that everyone is aware of everything. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, the universe, one cannot hide from the universe internally, nothing. And so, and especially in normal living, the breath is literally carrying out so much of, it's imprinted with so much of what we're processing and dealing with in the moment. And we're sharing it with everyone around us. In the air is carrying it all over the world. My point is to realize that we are also interconnected. We cannot avoid toxins. And everyone has their share of toxins, emotional toxins, mental toxins, physical toxins, and we're sharing it. Whether you like it or not, it's being shared. Your immune system is literally spreading tiny, what's called vesicles. These are tiny encapsulated structures we know that are in our blood that oftentimes carry fragments of viruses, fragments of antibodies. They carry all kinds of stuff we don't even know. I mean, it's almost fringe scientific understanding, but we know they're there, and they're beyond tiny. They're tinier than virus. They're tinier than the smallest things we can imagine, and we're spreading them constantly. And there's a whole thing to go down to called exosomes, vesicles. This whole idea that we're constantly spreading these tiny particles that's oftentimes have encoded DNA and RNA fragments in them. Of what? It's a rabbit hole. But what I'm trying to say is we know we are literally breathing these things out around us, and it's carried everywhere, all over the world. And so the point is, you need to have your detox capabilities primed at all times. That's the takeaway right here, right? You want to make sure your physical body detox mechanisms are efficient and primed, which gets back into normal wellness and healthcare, right? Is your liver, gallbladder working well? Is your colon doing what it needs to do and sufficiently balanced? Is your kidney, are your kidneys doing their job as well as they can? Are your lymphatics moving and flowing? Basic, these, these basic mechanisms in our body that are constantly detoxing. Your liver is every millisecond, all day and night, literally pulling out every possible toxin from your blood, and you don't even realize it. And the whole mechanism is happening down the chain, the kidneys through the colon. So emotionally, we need to have our emotional detox mechanisms primed, because right now, especially with the heightened emotional stress and tension of the world, your susceptibility to being triggered is off the charts, or being around someone that's triggered. You can't avoid it wherever you go. So, are your emotional is your emotional capability of handling triggered states, is that being developed? Which gets us back to meditation, mindfulness. Gets us back to learning how to feel, acknowledge, and to properly manage that feeling. Right? That's what mindfulness is, right? How to properly manage what you're feeling, how to properly manage what you're thinking. That's the key. That's what mindfulness is. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of proper emotional detox and keeping things primed right now. And again, this is how you balance spirituality and living a normal life. What I am talking about is the most spiritual activity you can do right now, is to learn how to properly manage your own feelings, thoughts, and sensations, because that dictates how you react in the moment to what's happening, which will dictate how literally you are acting, speaking, and responding outwardly to others, and literally what karma you're generating from there, or what level of karma you're able to burn and dissolve. You get that? It all comes down to right now how we are literally responding to our thoughts and feelings and our triggered processes that are happening, whether you like it or not. We're all getting triggered all day long. It's a part of life. We can't avoid that. And what I'm trying to tell you is the ideal mindset is get away from wanting to avoid these things. When I get triggered, I'm like, yeah, all right. There are parts of me that are responding. Okay, there are parts of me that are maybe angry or, you know, afraid or feeling ashamed or guilty. Yes. But there's a greater part of me that's like, yes, you're triggered. Good. You are releasing something, and this is your chance to really be with this and burn this karma, process, transcend, overcome it, whatever you want to call it, right? It's your chance. Do it. Let's do it. That's what goes on inside of me when I'm triggered, right? And so, but my point is though, you have to cultivate that. You have to practice that. And it allows me to handle stress much, much better than otherwise, than maybe in the past. Certain triggers that would have affected me for days. I'm like, okay, that sucks. I feel it. I don't like it. Let me just breathe through it. What do I have to do right now in this moment? Is there anything I can do about it? If not, is there anything within my control? If not, okay. Do I have any understanding about this? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, you move on. Right? Ideally, we know we should do that with most things, but our triggered selves keep us from doing that. That's the problem. And so this is about spirituality should be the most practical thing. Spirituality was not meant to be a fantastical, imaginary, woo-woo part of one's life where it's just about imagining how things should be or seeking states, ecstatic states, and just wanting to feel good or to imagine what is life beyond the veil or in other dimensions. Those are all part of the process. True spirituality is supposed to be the most practical, real thing in the moment. Is the thing. Because what we understand in spirituality is our true essence. The reality is we are not living our true essence, is the problem. Because we are so overcome, controlled, and triggered by these parts of us that respond to extreme things in our senses and what we see, hear, feel, think, our memories, our traumas, all these things that make up who we are. And that's what it comes down to. And that is the crux of even the original question I started with, how to balance being spiritual and being normal, to how to detox. And even connected to how to meditate, it comes down to the same thing. When you're having a thought, when you're having a feeling, a sensation, let it go, come back to your breath. That's why meditation is the ultimate practice for this, especially with mindfulness, right? Whatever you're focused on, whether it's a breath, mantra, visualization, part of the body, it doesn't really matter in general in the beginning. When you're meditating and you've lost your focus, come right back. You do that enough and you start to stay around what you're focused on. You do that enough and it becomes easier just to let things come and go, to let your thoughts and feelings come and go, to let your aches and pains come up when you're meditating. Your back is hurting. Ouch. Okay. So you stay with your breath or your focus. Stay with the pain. Stay with the pain. Nothing's going to happen. Stay with the pain. Don't do anything about it. Stay with the pain until what will happen if you're successful, the pain starts to change. Generally speaking, the pain can start to change and move and transform, and that's what's supposed to happen. Any questions? Any new questions about anything I've said? If anyone's still with me, anything specific about their own practice? This is a great chance about maybe something you're doing, some practice you have, and you're wondering about it. You're wondering maybe its potential or how kind of falls into how much it's helping or not. So this is a chance to bring it up, share. So please feel free to bring that up. Now, with meditation, like I said, anything that helps you move, anything that helps you unplug, whether it's simply, finding space to journal or to get away, nature, fall under the same category. Okay, meditation is a direct way to cultivate getting in touch with that inner space. Okay, so the other area that again is important is moving this tension, moving whatever is building up inside of you, the emotions, the blocks. So any form of what's called energy cultivation, chi pranic cultivation becomes really important. Breath work, traditional asanas, yoga. So, great question. What are my thoughts on psychedelics as a way of expanding consciousness? Is this too off topic? Of course not. We're getting in touch with your inner world. So, psychedelics are fantastic. You know, much of the world, usually in traditional mystical traditions, have used and relied upon psychedelics as a doorway into the other side, into the inner world. So, therefore, it's always been around in every part of the world. There's been some form of psychedelic use to help us overcome our senses and our ego and put everything kind of on the back burner and open the door for what's always there to naturally go in. Now, So we know the benefits of psychedelics. Certain psychedelics have more benefits. Certain ones may be a little more addicting. The key is, though, to understand it's a tool, like with anything else. It's a tool that's allowing you to go in the inner worlds within yourself, however you want to look at it, in the outer worlds, in the outer dimensions. But the problem becomes, usually psychedelics have always been done in a guided format, is the thing. Because especially if you're in the beginner stage of spirituality and there's still some significant healing, certain significant amounts of trauma or other emotional states that need to be healed and processed, which most of us still have. When you enter the inner world and you're being, the plant is literally guiding and thrusting you into that space, is the thing to realize. And the plant slash the energy connected to the plant, the spirits and beings connected to the plant, and in traditional psychedelic use, that's kind of what we're getting into, right? The idea that there are beings and spirits and conscious entities that are connected to the plant medicine that are there assisting the process. That's the whole point of it, right? And so the assisting a process of healing for you, of either gathering some information or assisting in some level of transformation, unlocking a certain key for you, something of that nature. So there'll be a non-physical guide, usually with this process, or a physical guide, a shaman, you know a guide or teacher helping you with this process. And so you have guidance along the way to help you when you need help. Because most of us, especially in the beginning stages of spirituality, need help. Okay. If you're in an advanced stage of spirituality, the thing is, you don't need psychedelics to get to where psychedelics get you to. See, that's the thing. So advanced meditators are getting to these states in their meditative states already, or their natural states with their transformations they've gone through with terms of their intuition opening up or their psychic centers opening up. They're naturally able to get to these states. Okay. So that's why psychedelics are generally done in the beginner stage, but the beginner stage is the vast majority of time. Almost everyone is on the spiritual path, just to keep clear. So you need guidance, and if you don't have the proper guidance, that becomes the problem. And if you're doing it just by yourself, recreationally, that can be a problem. It doesn't have to. And again, that depends on what substance you're using, and it depends on how much work you've done on yourself. It depends on what state of mind you're in. It depends on why you're doing it, because you are opening the door. You are opening these energetic astral doors that you're being pulled through. So if you're not in a good place, if you have some significant level of healing that's been surfacing that you're not dealing with, the door you could pull through may not be a door you like, is the problem. And the spirit of the plant may take on the persona of something you may not like, if that makes sense. And it's kind of how this thing works. It's not so much we get affected by this darkness or something, but it's the spirit of the plant will take on the energetic construct that you need for something that is important for you to address, clear, or heal. And that's the thing. Remember, your karma will find every opportunity to burn and heal. Always guaranteed. The sooner you can get that and embody it, it makes life so much easier to deal with things. Seriously. So with psychedelics, it is a massive opening for your karma. Literally. Okay. So if you don't have a strong guide to kind of direct you, go, hey, let's go into this door that will be very fun for you right now. Okay. That's when it can be great. Okay. And if you don't, it can be awful. I've experienced awful I've had awful experience with certain psychedelics. I've had amazing experience with certain psychedelics, and that's the thing. You just have to know this, and different ones have different properties. Is the thing, and the more you get educated on that, the better. And again, it's a part of spiritual traditions, but it's meant to be used in a very specific way. Is the thing. In the ancient history schools, I mean, they were starting with this. You would be given certain psychedelics in traditional shamanic, authentic shamanic cultures of the world. That's their primary go-to to have the vision quest, especially for beginners, for early shamans and things like that. Um, the plants were essentially given to us, if you will, from Creator, from Earth, for these processes. Plants are have been here. In other words, plants are an expression of the human consciousness, the consciousness of humanity have allied with the plant world to help them evolve is the way to think of it. So that's why there's plants for healing, herbs, and the whole world of botanical medicine. Plants. For those of you who may know, herbology, the law of signatures, and you know, certain plants that have certain appearances have been used for similar issues. So, when I lived in Arizona, in Phoenix, there's this cactus that looks um, like it's got needles that look like a rattlesnake thing, right? And guess what? It's used for rattlesnake poison. That's a thing. That's a law of signatures. And so plants have allied with humanity for this purpose. And so plant medicine is, yeah, a very powerful way to open the door, dive into that world, hopefully with guidance and hopefully with some maturity. And even if it's immature psychedelic use, it's going to open doors and you're going to be forced to experience stuff that you may not like, but it's still going to probably be good in the long run if you can handle it. It just depends. Great question. Any further questions? We've kind of gotten past the hour marker, so I'll continue on if any further questions come up in the next few minutes. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and close up. And so my goal is to have these on a regular basis. Hopefully down the road, I'll become a little more fluid and in the flow with these. This is my first one again. Remember, less technical difficulties and all these things. And my goal is to have two separate, consistent, open forum Q&As. One specifically for health and wellness, specifically for health conditions, wellness, supplements, things like that. And then one specifically for spirituality, spiritual topics, spiritual practices, other areas that I can geek out on and go down the rabbit hole, for these times. And so these are meant to be an extension. The spiritual Q&As were meant to be an extension of my monthly satsangs, which are just more personal, in-person gatherings of sharing of spirituality and me sharing more specific topics. So we'll have these more, maybe once a month, and then have the health Q&As once a month as well, and then along with the satsangs once a month. So hopefully this will keep going, and and you guys will have an outlet and a forum to really stay engaged with this whole world of healing and spirituality. It can be confusing, and there's so much to it. So with that being said, I don't see any more questions. We'll go and close up for now. It's been over an hour, and thank you guys for joining me, for all those that you did. Hope to see you next time, and you will be informed of the next one by email. I will have a website up soon for this as well. and have a great Sunday and a great week. Take care. Bye bye.